Hello and welcome to week 1 of the Mount Silver Draft League. My name is Scribbles, I am coach of the Colorado Cabalions, and this week we're up against a familiar face, DarkSoulProject. We played him in the semifinals of Mr. Egg Division last season, and with the setup for the league this year, we have a few out-of-conference matchups, and I had to give Dark Soul another crack at me. This year, since we're not in the same division, we didn't have much control over each other's drafts. We ended up with completely different teams, so that's good. No mirror match, which is always frustrating and difficult to build around. But DSP did get himself a pretty good team here. We recognize slacking, a staple on DSP team. And the only other returning member on his team this season is Chansey. So he's got his special wall back as well. The rest of his team, Cinderace, very high draft pick, very good Pokemon. Thundurus, also another really good Pokemon. Latios is quite good. In some ways, so I had Mega Latios kind of carry me last season, but in some ways Latios is better than Mega Latios because it can run an item, so it's pretty threatening there. Going down the rest of the team, Ludicolo, good weather answer. So if he goes up against a rain team, it gives him a really solid kind of check counter to that type of team build. Aside from that, he's got Warbeetle, which is a new Pokemon that I don't know too much about. I know it's a really good defensive Pokemon, and has a lot of support options. Beyond that, I don't know too much about the Pokemon. Hippowdon is a great physical wall, sand setter, gives him a little bit more weather control against any teams that are running weather. Volcarona is terrifying, setup sweeper, one of the best ones. We got a new items gen, heavy duty boots, which prevents hazard damage, which for Volcarona, who takes 50% from Stealth Rock, pretty good thing. So it's a lot harder to deal with Volcarona in this particular generation than it was in previous generations. On top of that, he also has Xatu, which is a way to help keep hazards off the field. And then Exploud, who also gets Throat Spray, which is a new item that could potentially boost its special attack. So I think DSP did a good job drafting a team that takes advantage of a lot of new mechanics, a lot of new items, a lot of new things in this generation. And his team is also, on top of that, particularly good against hazards. So Cinderace has Court Change, which allows it to basically take the hazard setup on the field and flip it. And with my team, if I got a bunch of hazards set up and then he just proceeded to flip them, that would be very bad for me. On top of that, Thundurus, Latios, both defoggers. He's also got, I think Orbeetle gets defog. Xatu, Magic Bounce, and defog. Volcarona can just ignore hazards. Hippowdon is bulky as all hell. A lot of problems for my typical build, which I anticipated just being kind of hazard stack and then sweep with Zeraora or Landorus. Going into the team build, some of the things on my mind, Volcarona, and Volcarona were the three biggest things I was concerned about. If it gets set up, it's very, very difficult to deal with. That's kind of always been the case. And with heavy-duty boots, it has an easier time getting set up than it used to. Other than that, Cinderace could be a problem for my team. I know it gets a lot of pretty good coverage, and it is one of the few Pokemon that I can still run Adamant or Modest with Zeraora, but it's really close. And with access to pivoting and a few other things, it's not a bad Scarfer for his team. I think Latios is probably better. Other than that, Thundurus does get Prankster, so it could status me, so setup seemed pretty risky. It just status me with Thunderwave. I didn't have a lot of great ways to attack this team. One thing that I did like was being able to nullify a few of my opponent's abilities, most notably Xatu's Magic Bounce with Galarian Weezing's Neutralizing Gas. In addition to that, I could keep Sandstorm from activating on Hippowdon. There's a few niche options. Being able to nullify Levitate on Latios so that it is affected by Toxic Spikes on Switch In is really good. Just some things like that. Basically, even though I said that hazards weren't very good against my opponent, I still kind of went in building them. The basic game plan here was going to be get hazards up, force my opponent to deal with them, and then get in position with Zeraora to Calm Mind and then sweep from there against his team. Kind of just quick run through the set. Kind of a backup strategy was a physical setup with Gyarados to also sweep. Because physical walls, his best one is Hippowdon, and Hippowdon kind of gets smacked by Waterfall because of the type effectivity. But anyway, going through the team, first Pokemon on the team is Alfred. So we did Marvel last year. I guess we got to go to DC. I don't know DC as well. Hoping I can come through with some decent references, but we'll see. Starting off with Alfred, the Galarian Weezing. Running Spike set, basically. This is not a suicide by any means. Way too bulky to be ever a suicide lead. But I am running Toxic Spikes. That's what it's basically trying to do. Pain Split to kind of get my health back up, along with Black Sludge. It can take a lot of physical hits. I think it survives hits from Hippowdon, depending on investment, even. Sludge Wave gives me a way to kind of hit a lot of his team neutrally. It doesn't do super effective damage too often, but it gives me Stab that's kind of a neutral hit. Strange Stream is a unique move to Galarian Weezing. Base 90 Fairy move with a 20% chance to confuse. Yeah, it's interesting. Hits Latios pretty hard, hits a lot on his team pretty hard. It's kind of your best... it's kind of your most interesting fairy option. I don't know about best, because you do get... you don't get Moonblast, but you do get Play Rough. So a little bit lower accuracy. Your attack stat is actually a little bit higher on Galarian Weezing this gen. And the base power of Play Rough is the same as Strange Steam, so technically your damage output's better. But you don't have any physical... your physical coverage is always worse on Weezing than its special coverage, so that seemed like a pretty reasonable set to me. Yeah, I think this is really standard. Nothing too crazy here. Next set here is Choice Scarf Lando Eye. This outspeeds a good majority of his team. The only things that it wouldn't outspeed would be... so it outspeed +1 Volcarona, which is huge. If Volcarona gets set up, I want something that can revenge immediately, and 85% of the time, or 90% of the time, this will revenge +1 Volcarona. Aside from that, Superpower gives me coverage against Exploud and Slacking. Also gives me kind of a neutral move to click. Hits Chansey really hard. It doesn't actually get boosted by Sheer Force. A little unfortunate. Neither does Earthquake, but having a physical move that I can click as kind of neutral against a lot of his team. I don't want Hippowdon switching in for free. I don't anticipate clicking Earthquake an awful lot, but it's there. And then U-Turn just is great for pivoting, and it's probably your safe choice when you're choiced with Landorus, so you don't get locked into a move that allows setup from your opponent. This is my primary win con in this game. It's Calm Mind, Zeraora. Calm Mind to boost up. I've got enough speed for Cinderace, and then max special attack and a little bit dumped into special defense. Double Electric is a bit iffy. I wanted Volt Switch to kind of be able to bring it in and pivot around freely early game. Fighting coverage didn't seem that great to me. Discharge, I like the Parachance. It's a little bit less powerful than Thunderbolt, but it's nice on the switch into any of his Scarfers or something like that to be able to get a para off. And then Grass Knot for Hippowdon. I've been burned so many times not running Grass Knot for Hippowdon matchups that I just don't think I'll ever not run it now. My other win con here is Bane. So Joker for Zera, Batman for Lando, and then we're going to run Bane as Gyarados. Substitute Dragon Dance. Substitute hopefully on kind of predicted Thunder switch-ins. With Prankster, it can be a little bit obnoxious. I also have Lumberry, so this would allow me to Dragon Dance and or so I could sub on Thunderous switch-in, who would anticipate a Dragon Dance. Dragon Dance when they break the sub, and then go ahead and click Waterfall to knock it out, and then if they go for Thunder Wave or something, I just get the Lumberry activation. So that's what I was going for with this set. Between Waterfall and Crunch, I can basically break his whole team. He doesn't have any resistance to that, to Water Dark coverage. So if I get +1 and then I can pick up a kill, it's pretty much over, and he'd have to switch into something that wouldn't die to +1 and would be able to take 2, which I don't know if there's too much on his team that can do that. So that was basically the idea behind that set. Houndoom here. This is kind of a weird set. This is a Chansey removal set. Kind of. Aside from that, it gives me a Psychic switch-in for Wheezing. Dark Pulse. Dark coverage is good against his team. He doesn't have a lot of good resists. Does he have any resists to Dark? No Dark resists. So that made bringing Houndoom pretty easy. Flame Charge to get set up is nice. Destiny Bond, once I'm faster than the opponent, can kind of give me a 2-for-1 if I get a kill with Houndoom. And then Taunt's there to, potentially pick off Chansey or just basically disrupt my opponent's strategy. Also immune to Prankster Moose, so it's kind of a neat little niche that Houndoom is kind of a switch-in to... Well, not a switch-in, it's a check to Thunderous at least, because after a Flame Charge I'd outspeed. And it's Harley, of course. The last member of the team, Penguin. So I didn't like Jirachi versus team. Cinderace kind of wrecked it, Hippowdon kind of wrecked it, Volcarona kind of wrecked it. I just didn't have a good matchup. So I ended up bringing Wigglytuff as my Stealth Rocker. Frisk is useful. Ice Beam has pretty good coverage against his team, so it does some damage. Perish Song, kind of an emergency, prevent Volcarona from setting up. If it tries to switch in on me, at least I can get that off and force it out. And then other than that, it's just going to pass Wishes. Doesn't do too much. I just liked it as a rocker better than Jirachi. If this gets up rocks and dies, it did its job. That's all I'm hoping for Penguin. Really, really fat Wishes with the base 140 HP. So that should be helpful for the team. As far as what I expect Dark Soul to bring, I can see him bringing basically all his main mons. So I see Cinderace and Thunderous coming for sure. I think Latios has a decent matchup against me. It's probably his best answer for Galarian Wheezing, just because of the psychic coverage. Hippowdon's good, but Hippowdon can be Will-O-Wisp, things like that, which would be bad for my opponent, obviously. Other than that, I see him bringing Chansey. I think he kind of needs a special wall, and I think Chansey's his best bet there. Also provides Stealth Rock and a lot of support. I see him bringing Hippowdon as a Stealth Rocker and just kind of physical wall. So physical wall with Hippowdon, special wall with Chansey. It seemed to be a strategy these Dark Soul really liked last year with Chansey and Umbreon. And then Volcarona. I think Volcarona has a good matchup. I think Volcarona's tough to deal with. That's another reason that Houndoom ended up coming from me, is that it resists the dual stat. Well, it's immune to fire, and it only takes neutral from Bug. And the grass coverage that Volcarona might run would be not very effective. So Houndoom matches up pretty well with Volcarona. So overall for Volcarona, I have one hopefully emergency check, one potential emergency check in the form of Destiny Bond, Taunt, and then something that could potentially force it out if it gets out of hand. Not great, but I'm pretty worried about Volcarona. So we'll go ahead and see how the battle goes. Okay, so we're here at the battle, and the only difference between what I expected DSP to bring and what he actually brought was he had Exploud over Volcarona. So a little unfortunate. I lose move slot here or there and some EV investments, but I think I would trade those to not have to face off against Volcarona. So yeah, I'm kind of okay with that. Everything else is kind of what I expected. As far as leads, I considered Wheezing and Wigglytuff. I wanted to kind of get hazards up ASAP. I think Wheezing has a tough time against a few of his Pokemon. Specs Latios or Specs Exploud are both very threatening. I can be taunted by Prankster Thundurus because it's still faster than me, and Thundurus doesn't really fear anything, especially from Weezing. So I ended up going with Wigglytuff. 2 reasons. Stealth Rock was not guaranteed, but I was in a decent position with Wigglytuff. Even if I got taunted by Thundurus, I had Ice Beam available, and I'd also be able to figure out an item. So 2 of his Pokemon, it's pretty obvious, I think. Chansey's Eviolite. The Powdon's probably leftovers, something along those lines. But I would really like to know an item on the rest of his Pokemon. I think that could be huge in the match. So end up leading up Wigglytuff, trying to get Stealth Rocks, trying to get some item scouting. DSP leads Exploud, and I see Choice Scarf. So the Choice Scarf on Landorus still ends up having quite a bit of utility, so I have something that outspeeds this. I am also carrying Superpower, so I can outspeed and KO this using Landorus. Knowing that it's Scarf and not Specs, I know I can take 2 Boom Bursts. So I'm free to get up rocks here, and I go ahead and do that. Check the damage, 40%. I think that meant he was Modest Scarf, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe that was Timid. I can't remember. So I'm doing this post-com quite a bit after, so there's going to be a few details that I miss on. But regardless, I know I can take another Boom Burst and not die. I also know that I've got really, really fat wishes from Wigglytuff. So if I fire off a wish this turn, I should be able to pivot into another Pokemon and then threaten Exploud out. Specifically in this case, Lando is the only Pokemon on my team that can guarantee a KO and is guaranteed outspeed. So I fire off the wish, kind of keeping that sequence of plays in mind. I do a few calcs here just to guarantee that Lando I will get back up to full health and then can KO Exploud with Superpower, and everything looks good. So I want to go ahead and pivot over to Lando, takes the Boom Burst. If I get crit there, I think I just lose. I think I just get 6-0'd by Exploud, to be perfectly honest, which is horrible. But I don't. I get the wish off, and now Superpower KOs. And I'm not forced to click it, but I almost certainly do want to click it. So I go ahead and go for that. And Latios comes in. It takes basically nothing from Superpower. I mean, it is non-stab resisted until does 25 because Lando I is broken. But I'm locked into Superpower against Latios. This isn't where I want to be. So I hard switch out. This should reveal that I'm Choice Scarfed on Lando. If I wasn't Choice Scarfed, I would probably U-turn there. I guess there's a scenario where I do hard switch there if I'm not Choice Scarfed because I'm worried about Latios being Choice Scarfed. In either case, I hard switch into Houndoom, which is going to resist. It's going to be immune to Psychic. It's going to resist Ice Beam. The only thing I really have to worry about is if DSP made some wild play and clicked Earthquake, predicting Houndoom to come in. Not knowing if I'm Scarfed or not knowing for sure at that point. I don't think he's going to make that play, and Houndoom's a super safe play. So ends up going for Roost. This all but confirms that he's not choiced himself. I could see you running a Choice Specs or Choice Scarf Latios with Roost if you didn't need the extra coverage. Just relying on it as kind of a dumb pivot in that way. So it's definitely possible. I'm just going to go ahead and click Flame Charge here. And the reason I went for Flame Charge is that I do outspeed Exploud, so it prevents Exploud from coming in and kind of wreaking more havoc. Dark Pulse is a decent move here, but it's not going to kill Latios. And I think Flame Charge just gives me the most. It allows Houndoom to outspeed Cinderace, Latios if he stays in, Exploud, and Thundurus. So I think Flame Charge was kind of the mid-ground play that gave me something no matter what he switched to. I ended up switching to Chansey, which makes a ton of sense. It's kind of a special sponge. I get the Flame Charge off, do a solid 9%, and get the speed boost. At this point, I didn't want him to get Rocked up, and I didn't want him to recover. So I'm just going to go ahead and taunt. I don't have designs on anything grander at this point. I just want to prevent the recovery. So I go for taunt. Opponent uses soft boiled, makes sense. Now I'm just going to sit here in Dark Pulse and kind of try and chip away at Chansey, keeping it low enough that Zeraora can maybe finish it off late game, or it basically stays in range of any attack that I want to go for with the rest of my team. Get a little chip. He reveals counter, perhaps thinking I'm a fully physical Houndoom. I don't know. I don't know if a fully physical Houndoom is good. Maybe it's not terrible. I guess if he thinks I'm like Taunt Sucker Punch, counter's a good move because it prevents... I don't even know how that interaction works. I would assume that Sucker Punch still does damage in that scenario. Either way, it's not going to do a lot back to me. Houndoom's attack isn't great. But that's what he ends up going for. So this gives me some free Dark Pulse damage, which is nice. Next turn I go for Dark Pulse. He ends up firing the Seismic Toss off, which makes a little bit more sense. You can see that that's a clean 3-8 KO. I probably could have done a more optimal investment. I think that you'll see a theme through this video is there's a lot of rust that needs to be knocked off. Week 1 in a new league, new Pokemon, a bunch of stuff like that. There's a lot of suboptimal investments and team building decisions. So getting Houndoom to have 301 HP isn't hard and is something that I definitely should have done so that he doesn't get 3-8 KO'd by Seismic Toss. The taunt ends. I'm going to taunt again. There's no way I want Chansey to recover HP or get up Stealth Rocks, but the HP is the bigger concern. DSP makes the correct play and Seismic Tosses again. So this wasn't my initial plan, but now I'm kind of in this position where I can trade Houndoom for Chansey. He's taunted and I have Destiny Bond. I go ahead and pull the trigger on that here, so I go for the Destiny Bond and take Chansey down with me. At the time, it felt like a good move, because Chansey was always going to be a bit difficult to deal with. In retrospect, I don't think it was. I think keeping Houndoom alive to prevent Psychic from Latios being completely free, especially if he ended up being a choice variant, either Specs or Scarf, would have been a really, really good choice for me. The trade's nice, but Houndoom's too valuable as a deterrent for just my opponent spamming Psychic moves. From here, I go into Lando. Being Choice Scarfed, I assume I have a speed advantage over his entire team. I'm thinking Latios isn't Choice Scarf based on the Roost. If Thundurus or Cinderace are Scarfed, they outspeed me, but neither one of them has things that threaten me to a very large amount with hidden powers being removed from the game. So Lando seemed like a safe play, and I go ahead and go out with that. My opponent goes into X-Cloud. So here, there's a little bit of mind games. I don't know if he knows that I'm Choice Scarf. I think the obvious play here is to just Superpower. I think it's obviously the best play, too, because I don't have great switch-ins to Boom Burst. And I don't think he's confirmed that I'm Choice Scarf, so I think I get a free kill here, Superpowering. Is that what I do? No. I click U-turn. Get a good amount of damage off, and then I just sack Wigglytuff. My opponent does go for Ice Beam here. So that attack makes sense. And, you know, in the next turn, we'll get to like maybe why the choice of U-turning with Lando was perhaps like Galaxy Brain level. If he goes for Boom Burst, he likely doesn't kill Lando. And he knows he doesn't kill Lando. It does 72% and I was at full. And he knows I have Superpower. So he might assume that I'm not Choice Scarfed. I think that's the only way that Ice Beam there makes sense. He might assume that I'm set up or something like that. Like Rock Polish or some set like that. And so when he clicks Ice Beam, Wigglytuff survives, and I'm fine just keeping a sack. So I pivot out into Gyarados here. So Gyarados in position. Ice Beam does 25%. I really wish it did 20%. That would have made the next series of turns a lot easier. I did the damage calcs, and the roll's in my favor for it to not break my sub. So I end up going for Substitute, and my opponent pivots out into Thunder. So this is a situation that I described exactly in the team builder. Everything's set up for me to just potentially sweep here. So what do? Dragon Dance is for sure the play. Gets me to +1. I have a Lumberry. I outspeed Thundurus at +1. But in the back of my mind, I'm still worried that this is Scarf. And if it's Scarf and it goes for Thunderbolt, I don't outspeed at +1 and I just die. So what I do instead is I just click Waterfall. I just kind of cash in the substitute for a kill. Waterfall, I'm pretty sure kills Thundurus from this range. The only thing it doesn't kill on switch in is Latios, but I've got Crunch for that. So I try and cash in a kill for this substitute. My opponent Volt switches out, which makes me think that maybe he is Scarfed into Exploud, and I am able to remove Exploud, which is nice. I get the attack boost. Back in comes Thundurus. So this position, I know Thundurus is faster than me. I know it has Volt Switch. I know it kills me. I think all of that seems super obvious to me. I know that Dark Soul knows that if I click Waterfall here, or Dragon Dance, which I haven't revealed yet, I just win. So I didn't think he could afford to not click an electric move here. It seemed really bad for him to allow Gyarados to just win. So maybe this is the time for me to make a play. I think he had to click an electric move. So I went into Zera, and he clicks Psychic. He gets a crit, but that's Rob. Neither of that really matters. This is a time when Houndoom being alive would have been really nice. I think it makes Psychic not free, especially if he's a Choice Scarf variant. If he's Choice Scarf, Psychic gives him the option of 2-hit KOing Gyarados. And it also gives him really, really good neutral coverage against the rest of my team. So if Houndoom was alive here, I don't think he clicks Psychic. He might not click an electric move. Maybe he clicks like Sludge Wave or something like that. But I don't think he clicks Psychic. Here, Zeraor is in. It's taking a special defense drop. I kind of just want to figure out if he's Scarfed. So I just go ahead for Volt Switch. And DSP makes another nice play and goes out into Powdon. And I just sit here and take sand damage and get nothing out of it. So feeling a little frustrated. I've got Grass Knot. I kind of just want damage off on Powdon, realistically. So I go ahead and go for that. And DSP does the right move, scouts for it. Latios comes in, takes nothing from Grass Knot. Quad resist? No, just 2 times resisted, but non-stab. And I take more sand damage and Life Orb. And so I'm super, super low now. Here, I hard switch into Gyarados. I think I wanted to keep Zera alive to potentially Grass Knot, and because I think it still outsped his team. In hindsight, I don't know how I feel about that play. I don't have Psychic switch-ins anymore. Losing Houndoom, I think, was a bad trade on my part. And almost throwing away Gyarados here was also not great for me. So I bring in Gyarados. I think that I do survive a Psychic from here. Should double check that really quick. It's a roll not in my favor. It's pretty close to a roll, like a 50-50. And Crunch is a roll in my favor as far as I know. After the Roost, he's clearly out of range, and after the Sandstorm damage, I'm clearly in range. So I switch out to Wigglytuff as a sack in this position. I discovered the Culver Berry, so Crunch would have been useless anyway. So the whole Gyarados play there, I think between the Zera and Gyarados play, that whole pivoting around, DSP really had my number. So I died to Psychic, because Psychic is now free for my opponent to click. I go back into Landorus, who I know outspeeds Latios. I guess I know Latios is faster than Gyarados because of the Sandstorm damage. And I know Zeraora was faster than Latios because of the Sandstorm. So I knew Latios probably wasn't Scarfed unless it was a really weird speed tier. So I go into Landorus and I click the move that does the most damage here, which is U-turn. And from here, Zeraora is probably not doing anything, so I think I U-turn into Zera and just go ahead and sack it off, basically. Yeah. So it dies to Ice Beam. It's good to know that it has Ice Beam. I think in this position, Lando pretty clearly outspeeds Latios, and I think it's in my opponent's best interest to switch here. And he does. The only problem in this particular instance is that Rock Slide still kills from 28%. So Rock Slide's free for me to click. I click Rock Slide, I connect, and I get a crit, and it kills Cinderace. So this crit mattered. I think it was 25% roll, so 25% of the time I killed Cinderace. But you can see Cinderace didn't take rocks damage, so it has heavy duty boots. And I outspeed Cinderace because of my Choice Scarf. So it mattered insofar as I had to hit another Rock Slide. So 90% of the time it doesn't matter, 10% of the time it does. So odds were still in my favor of killing it on the next hit. The next move, my opponent, Dark Soul going back into Latios. This, I think, was a mistake. I don't know if it was the crit that tilted him. This is where it could have mattered the 90%. So if I have to move again, he can confirm that I'm Scarfed. And he almost certainly doesn't go into Latios. So the only reason to go back into Latios is if you think I'm not Choice Scarfed. But I am. Rock Slide connects again. And now my opponent goes into Hippowdon, realizing that Hippowdon's the best switch into a Choice Scarf Landorus. I can't do anything here. I do some damage calcs on Crunch, and Gyarados can survive too. But I also think my opponent would be crazy to go for Earthquake against a Lando with a Gyarados in the back. So I go ahead and switch into Wheezing. Wheezing from my calcs based on a fully defensive Hippowdon can take one Earthquake. So I pivot into Wheezing. I take a Crunch. It does very minimal damage. I didn't actually calc that, and I should have, because that would have revealed that Hippowdon did have some offensive investment, and that I wasn't actually going to survive this Earthquake. I just fired off a Sludge Wave trying to get a Poison. That's basically all I was doing. I was hoping to do Sludge Wave, and then EQ I thought would take me down low, and then I could Pain Split, and then get another Sludge Wave, essentially. But Earthquake ended up picking up a clean KO there. I'd be interested to know what that roll was, so DSP, if you want to comment below. My investment was full, I'm pretty sure. I was just 252 defense, no HP. So let me check that really quick, actually. Because I did the calc on the standard set in the damage calc. And Earthquake was doing something like 73%. And that's with no attack. So max attack was 76 to 90. That's max attack non-boosting. If it's boosting, it's 82 to 98. So I think regardless, it was a roll. But correct me if I'm wrong, DSP. All it would have allowed me to do was get off a Pain Split and get a little bit more HP back. And lower Hippowdon, which would have put me in better position coming up in this next sequence. So here, Landorus really doesn't have anything to hit Hippowdon for a large amount of damage. Superpower does a decent amount, but not an immense amount. So I pretty much have to go to Gyarados. I go to Gyarados here, and I think the obvious play is to Dragon Dance turn 1. Crunch likely isn't a 2-hit KO from here. If I go to Gyarados and yeah, so even max attack is max of 37% damage. And once I get a Dragon Dance off, I'm doing closer to, so to max HP, I'm doing 80 to 93% with Waterfall. So I think Dragon Dance was the obvious play. I needed to get one good hit on Hippowdon to put it in range of Superpower, and then Landorus could superpower those way through, so kill Hippowdon, and then Thundurus would come in with 6% after rocks. And even at -1, I could do 6% with Thundurus. So Dragon Dance felt like the only play for me here. I went for it, and DSP went for a Slack Off. If I just went straight for Waterfall, that made a lot of sense. You could whittle me down into range of Crunch with sand damage. But I think at this point, I've won the game. I end up going for Waterfall here and getting a flinch. You can see it takes him down to 10%. Even without the flinch, and say he's max attack and gets the roll with Crunch, like max roll with Crunch, and I die. Hippowdon being at 10% dies to Superpower, and then Superpower just cleans the game up. So this mattered for differential purposes, but that's about it. So after he flinches, I can just Waterfall through and finish the game off. A little bit of bad luck from DSP. The crit on Cinderace mattered insofar as it didn't reveal information, but I think that information was already revealed. I think it was a very reasonable assumption to assume I was Scarf, especially with how I played around Exploud with Lando. And then the flinch on Hippowdon mattered for differential. I think that's pretty much it. I go ahead and finish off with a Waterfall. So good game to Dark Soul. I think we both were really rusty coming into this. I think us hitting our stride, I think we'll have decent teams. I think we'll both round into form. It's interesting, we're both coming from Mystery Egg, so hoping to show well from the lowest division kind of up here with the big boys, so to speak. But had a lot of fun. Great match to Dark Soul. Look forward to the rest of the matches of the season. Hopefully we'll both make the playoffs. And that's it for this week. See you guys later.